Hi, there you are. How are you doing? Good. I can't hear you. Oh, there you go.
I'm doing great.
Good. Great to see you again.
Yeah, glad to see you too. How's it been?
Oh, good. We've already got participants coming in. I've been good. I'm having a good week. How about you?
Yeah, same too. Thank you so much for last week. We've had really good comments so far.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's
And
great to hear. I really enjoyed it. So today will be good too.
yes, thank you so much. We have people coming in.
Yeah. Oh, I see some of the same names. That's nice too.
Yeah. I'm register.
Put my blinds down a little bit.
Okay.
Right, son? Got any better?
Get my pen ready. Did you like the format for last week?
I did. That worked well for me. Is it good for you guys?
Yeah, it was really good. Let's see what happens. Okay. Let's let live.
Give everybody a few minutes to log on.
I think we might just, once we have, let's see if we hit, would you want to give a few minutes?
Yeah, we can wait a few more minutes.
Okay.
I know it's the afternoon there, so.
I just saw your message on WhatsApp.
I just wanted to double check.
Okay.
You know how that is.
Yeah. Right. Awesome. Ojibwe, can see you, Charles. Charles, how are you? See Faith, Auntie, good to see you again. Bello, Obioma,
yeah.
Ifeanyi Madu, it's like every year. I think the other guy is coming online now. Okay, good. So, we could start.
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I think we should start. People are typing already. Hey, okay, you're all saying hello. Okay, great. So, good day, everybody. It's exciting to have Trish today. And today we're going to be focusing on sales and marketing in the age of COVID-19. So I would have Trish, on the floor right now, and then after that we'll move on to Q&A. The same pattern as our former class, all right? So super excited. You're welcome, Trish.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah,
Happy to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Okay.
For those of you who weren't on with us on Tuesday, I'm Trish Thomas. I've known Mene Blessing for quite a few years. And yeah, he asked me to participate in Business Oracle. I own an advertising and marketing agency in Colorado in the United States. And I'm really happy to just share some tips and advice with you, what we're seeing work with our clients and some of the trends that are happening in the marketplace. Can you guys see my screen? Should be coming up. Can you see it?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Mm-hmm.
That's strange. It looks like it's sharing to me. Let me stop share and restart it. Oh, you can, but it's all black. Okay. Let me try this again. Any luck this time? Can you guys see the presentation?
It's still dark.
Still black. Do you want to present it, Blessing? And then I can just tell you when to advance the slides. Does that work?
Let me see. Just a minute. Okay. So I'm gonna share my own slides now.
You got it?
Yeah, my slides are open now.
Great. Thanks for your patience, everybody. This worked fine on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's probably the first page, but let's see. Okay, I'm sharing my screen.
Okay.
Sure, that's it.
Perfect. Thanks for doing that. Didn't want to waste any time. So what we're going to talk about today is really this impact that the COVID-19 outbreak has had on corporate communications, marketing, advertising, and sales, and how companies are having to adapt the way that they're running their marketing and sales and advertising to kind of fit a new reality that we have in society and with our consumers and our business customers. So I want to talk today about a couple of different things. Internal messaging, how you're dealing with your own employees, your vendors, your contractors, all the people that, they're directly engaged with your business. We're going to also talk about how to have financial conversations. I know that for a lot of people, the impact on their revenue and their cash flow, they're having to, deal with vendors on their payment terms and things like that. A lot of you have investors and lenders that you have to communicate with. So we're going to talk about some effective communication tips for addressing them. We're, of course, going to talk about external communications, social media, email marketing, press, relations, just how you're kind of dealing with all of those external factors in your marketing and advertising efforts. And then I want to close with just kind of some general high-level advice about how to approach marketing and sales during this really strange time. And there's a QA button at the bottom. So if questions pop up, go ahead and put them in real time. And when we get to the end, we'll answer as many as we possibly can. All right, let's go ahead to internal communications and go one more. Perfect. Let's start with how you deal with your team. And I know that, I have a staff too. This has definitely been a challenge for me. as we were kind of walking through being shut down, having some disruption with our client accounts and things like that. So a couple of tips that I wanted to point out for you when dealing with your own internal team are, first of all, clarity and calm. This is not a time to kind of leave people in the dark and not share information. It's not a time to let any stress or anxiety that you're feeling necessarily translate to them. You really want to kind of be a rock and a pillar of confidence, and just try to reassure them that everything's going to be okay. At the same time, you're addressing the reality of the situation. So I would really encourage you to communicate clearly, openly, and to really try to instill confidence in your team. Avoiding denial is a piece of that. As much as you want to kind of be an anchor for your staff, not let them see maybe every bit of stress that you're going through, they're also going to be able to tell if you're actually being dishonest or hiding information from them, making things seem like they're rosier than they are, or not telling them the truth about what's going on. So I would also tell you to be, shoot straight with your team. Tell them if if you're losing some accounts, if sales are down, if you think that there might be some hard decisions to be made in the future. I think you kind of owe it to them to at least get real and let them know what's going on in your world. Team decisions have emerged as very important. I'll tell you a story about my company. So we lost a couple of client accounts. We had a few clients pare back their budgets, which I'm sure has been happening with a lot of you. Luckily, we didn't have a huge impact to our revenue, but we were going to have to cut our payroll cost. And I knew we needed to cut essentially one full-time position out of our payroll. But instead of just laying somebody off, I talked to the team about it, told them that, like, look, this is where we're at. We have to save X number of dollars a month. I think we should work together to figure out how to best do that. So multiple team members agreed to cut their salaries back short term so that we got those cost savings for the company. They were all able to keep their jobs and we were able to keep work moving. So I would really encourage you, where it's appropriate, to pull your team into your decisions. Sometimes they'll have really good ideas and you'll be surprised what they're willing to do to help you get through this period. Transparency is really important. And we've kind of touched on this already, but just making sure that you're being very open and honest about what's going on, the decisions you're having to make, the challenges you're facing. I think empowerment is another very important thing, meaning that instead of your staff just feeling like it's on you to fix everything for the company, that they feel empowered to make some big moves themselves, to make some decisions, to maybe change things within their workflow or their job duties, to bring ideas to you. So it's really important that you empower them to participate in solving the problems instead of just sitting back and waiting for you to do it. Because as we know, great ideas come from a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different people. And if you shut your team out, you're really going to probably miss some great opportunities and some great ideas to solve problems. And I would encourage you to just be kind too, even if you're having to lay people off or stop work on something. You can always be empathetic. You can always be kind. Tips with business partners. And I know a lot of you are probably operating businesses where you've got some partners, other people own percentages of your company. I think one thing that's very important with partners is that you not just be silent. You need to initiate the conversation. You need to begin to push information to them. So I would really encourage you, even if, all the news that you have to share, or maybe some of the things you have to ask them for aren't going to be great news, that you go ahead and initiate the conversation and you kind of deal with it up front. I think acknowledging hurdles is very important. Kind of like with staff and avoiding denial, your partners know if the business is facing some stress and some challenges. So acknowledge the hurdles head on. It's always best to do that. Let them know the reality of what you're dealing with, and always share possible solutions with that. I think where people can get really concerned and can begin to kind of get into a state of anxiety that's not healthy for them, it's typically when they don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. They don't see any possible solutions. So I think it's really important that even as you're acknowledging hurdles, you're sharing some of your own ideas for how to solve things and how to get to the other side. And I think asking clearly for help is another one. Don't think of it as just a reporting out. Hey, this is what's going on. This is where we're at. This is what we're going to do about it. Always think of ways that other people can help you and invite them to participate in your recovery. Let's talk about customers as well. If you were on the call on Tuesday, we talked quite a bit about listening, the importance of listening. You really need to understand what's going on psychologically with your customers right now. You need to understand how they're feeling about your company, about your products and your services. You need to really understand what's going on in their world, the difficulties that they're facing, and the ways that you can actually help them. So I would really start with, instead of trying to scramble and shake things up for your customers without talking to them, take the time to pull them in a little bit and to understand what's going on with them deeply. Be authentic. I think customers right now are very sensitive to kind of an aggressive sales focus, a very self-serving marketing tone, not being real about what's going on with your company and what may happen with prices or availability or things like that, or customer service response time if you're dealing with a flood of calls and emails. So I think anytime you can be authentic about the situation that you're in and what you're doing to take care of them, they're going to really be appreciative of that. Responding as quickly as possible is fast right now too. Whether your company is seeing lagging customer service and fulfillment times or not, people are dealing with it very broadly. And I think the frustration level is high with phone lines that no one ever answers, emails that never get responded to, lack of updates. We know shipping times are lagging, and there's supply chain issues with availability for a lot of products. We know that for service providers, sometimes it's really hard to keep up with the demands that are being asked of you. So I would keep that response time as fast as you possibly can. And if there are places where you can't maintain great customer service and a fast response time, tell people what to expect. Just be honest. I think your customers want to be confident that you're going to be there in the future. Anytime people invest in products or services, obviously the delivery of those things hinges on the health and the longevity of that company. And, you know, some of the resiliency factors that we talked about on Tuesday come into play here. Tell them what you're doing to sustain your organization and to get through this difficult time, so that they have confidence and they still want to invest their dollars with you over a competitor or another option. We've seen supporting data really be important. And by that, I mean, you know, this is a time where I think there's so many kind of scams, misinformation. There's a lot of fraud that goes on in times like this, and it makes people get really distrustful of everything. Do you know what I mean? They just start to wonder if everybody's out to get them a little bit. So I think anytime you're pushing a sales message out, you're marketing yourself, you're presenting some feature of your product or service or some benefit of it, try to use supporting data wherever you can, because that's just going to give them that little extra rubber stamp of confidence that, that they want to do business with you and that you're the right choice. Consolidating information is important. I don't know how you guys are, but I'm getting more emails, text, you know, marketing messages than ever. Everybody's really kind of ramping up their digital communication in the gap from physical communication and being in person with people. With that happening, people's inboxes are kind of overflowing. Their social media feeds have a ton of stuff in them. You know, the apps that they're using are getting filled up with new messages. So anywhere you can consolidate information, if you've got a couple of different things to communicate to your customer base, try to do it all at once in the best way for them. And that kind of brings me to customizing communications. I think it's important that if you've got a key message to get out, or if you have a deal or an offer or a new product to announce or a change to your services, whatever it is that you're trying to push out, think of the right channel to hit your different customers, and probably hit them across some different channels. Some people like text messages or to do things in app. Other people respond better to email. Other people are constantly watching social media and they're following you, and that's where they consume information from you. So customize your communications to fit their preferences as much as possible. And then they'll be much more likely to see them in this era where we're so cluttered and kind of bombarded with a lot of different messages. Kind of like with your staff, when we were talking about making team decisions, I think this is really a time to invite participation from your customers. If you're in the middle of developing a product or service, you're facing some hurdle with your supply chain or fulfillment processes, you're dealing with some other issues that touch them in some way, pull them into the conversation. Take the time to send a survey out, do a focus group, get on the phone with a handful of your business or consumer customers and find out what they think of what you're cooking up, because a lot's shifting right now. Some of the things that we saw working historically are now not, and there's some new things that are really attractive to people. And so I think pulling that participation in from your customers in appropriate places will help you make better decisions and put things out into the marketplace that they're going to love. And then setting expectations is important. A little bit like when we were talking about the fast response time and things like that. They need to know if something that they previously received in a few days is going to take 2 weeks to arrive. They need to know if they're going to see your product missing from store shelves because of availability and inventory issues. They need to know if they're going to pick up the phone to call you for help and it might take an hour to get an answer. So I would just say, let them know what you're able to provide to them and what they can expect from you, and also what you expect from them, what they can do to help you serve them better. So those are some internal communications tips I would encourage you to keep in mind for those different kind of stakeholder groups. And I think that will help you have your organization in a position to serve your customers better and keep marketing and sales moving. So let's talk about financial communications, which are always so fun when your business is under stress. It can be really difficult. I want to start with vendor communications first, because I think it's easy when times get tough for your business to not necessarily acknowledge that there's this ecosystem around you and there's this ripple effect that occurs. And when good things happen, it's a positive ripple effect. And when your business is under stress, it can make things difficult for the vendors that support you. So some things I would definitely consider as you're communicating outward with vendors and talking with them about your relationship, your partnership. Remember that they have a business too. They're not just there to serve your business, but they have an entirely separate set of business concerns, opportunities, and challenges that you don't. Do your best to understand and consider their perspective in what you're doing. What are the most important elements of the partnership for them? What's the potential impact of changes that you may make in your relationship for their business, not just for your business? And that'll help you really negotiate from a position of empathy, understanding, and being able to make concessions in smart ways, and come to deals that work not only in your favor, but ensure the survival and the continued partnership of your supply chain. Remember that you both need each other, that even though they supply something to you and you pay them for it, that they're a key driver in your operation, and you shouldn't take that really lightly. For a lot of us, if we lose our vendors or our contractors or our partners, big pieces of our business can be very negatively impacted. So make sure that even if you're having to revisit some things with them, change terms, if you're cutting back on your buying or something like that, that you're, remember that you pay them, but you need them too. Transparency, openness, honesty continue to be important. I know we've had some vendors that because of client delays, we've ended up having to pay them a little bit later than usual. And as stressful as that can be, it's a lot less stressful if you know that it might be 2 more weeks before you get paid. So I'd really encourage you to not just go dark on people, not just, not pay them or change the rules of the game or cut back unexpectedly, but talk to them about what's going on and why you're doing what you're doing. I think sharing with them what you need and how they can help you. Again, if they're a cog in the wheel of your supply chain and you're paying them, it's in their best interest to help you maintain revenue so that it maintains the pass-through income for their business. So let them know how they can help and what you need from them to help keep your business thriving. Share what they can expect from you. If you're realistically going to have to go from usually paying them in a month to paying them in 2 months because you're dealing with cash flow challenges, tell them that. If realistically you're, the minimum order quantities maybe they have or their hourly rate or something like that isn't going to work for you right now, let them know, talk about it openly, share what you are able to do and what they can expect from you. And I think reconnecting frequently and recalibrating is important. Everybody's wondering right now how much of certain things that happen are permanent and how much are short term. And I think that, in the complexity of some of these shifting relationships, it's important to continue to reach out and look back at the current partnership, make sure that it still works for both sides. Let's talk about investors and lenders next. And this is always hard. So a couple of things I would keep in mind. Number one, remember that your business surviving is their chief goal too. If you go under, or if your business is under intense financial stress, you're not going to be able to pay them, or you're not going to be able to deliver the returns that they're expecting from you. So keep in mind that even, as that relationship can feel a little bit anxiety inducing for entrepreneurs often, your business surviving is their goal too. So remember that they're on your side, even if it can be a little bit intimidating to open a conversation sometimes. I would reach out to investors and lenders early. The last thing you want to do is have a couple of loan payments not be made and not have talked to the lender. It's always better to go to your lenders first and say, hey, here's what we're dealing with. Can we have a deferment? Can you, stop charging interest to our account for a while? Can we roll a few payments to the end of our loan or something like that? And it's always better to talk to them sooner rather than later, and talk to them before you have a problem. The same way with investors. If there are things that they expect from you that you're not going to be able to deliver on, if you're having to adjust your projections, if you're having to change your business operations or your staffing in a significant way, open an early conversation and let them know what's going on before you do it, instead of telling them after the fact, a couple months later, that you've made some major changes to your business operations. I would also say don't make assumptions. A lot of times, what we think might happen in our own head is worse than what actually happens. Do you know what I mean? And so I wouldn't sit around and stress too much about, whatever your investor or whatever your lender is going to say. Don't make assumptions about whether they're going to work with you or not. Don't make assumptions about whether they're going to be upset about something or not. Often those fears don't play out. So don't let yourself get in that headspace with fear and not work with them. I would also say don't be needy. This isn't a time to come to them, with your hands out and no options on the table, and that kind of needy mentality of, this all hinges on you and you have to help me. I think addressing near-term challenges that you're facing head on is critically important. This is what's happening in our business. This is what we're doing about it. Just be straight up. And always follow problems with possible solutions. We talked about that earlier with your internal partners in your business, which sometimes investors are. Sometimes they're an investor and they also have an equity stake and they're an active participant in the day-to-day operations of your business. So make sure that you're pulling them into solutions if there's a problem you're bringing to them that you haven't fully solved yet. I think keeping the excitement and the confidence alive is important too. A lot of businesses are facing challenges, but this won't last forever. Things will get back to normal. The important part, and one reason we talked about resiliency first, is that you have to stabilize your business and you have to be able to survive to even get to the point of getting on the upward curve again, as the lockdown orders ease and the coronavirus is under control. So keep that confidence in place about the future, even as you're talking about these near-term challenges. Make sure that you're still talking about future plans, possible opportunities, what you're going to do when things start to go back to normal, so that they're still, as much as they're trying to help you solve problems in the short term, they're excited about working with you and they believe in you for the future. And then, kind of like with vendors, keep the updates and the dialogue going. This is a time where, let's say a lender's given you a 3-month deferment on payments. Update them once a month during that 3-month period. Here's what's going on. Here's where we're at. We're still anticipating we can meet our new agreement. Let them know what's happening throughout the cycle. Same thing for investors. If you usually report out to them quarterly, might not be bad to send out a monthly summary, because things are changing so much. In that gap of information, they can get worried about what's going on with you. All right, we can move to the next section. Let's talk about email marketing first. And I would say email marketing also kind of applies to if you're doing any app push promotions or you're doing any like text messaging or anything like that. So I'm talking about push communications where you're pushing something out to people. The main thing I've seen working in email for our clients is it really needs to be all about the recipient, whoever the recipient is, usually a customer or a prospect, but it could be other groups as well. Make sure that the tone of the message, the subject line, the way you're approaching whatever it is that you're communicating out is through their lens. How does it apply to them? How does it impact their life? This isn't a time to really just give self-serving updates or waste people's time with kind of not targeted, not focused communications. People don't have a lot of patience for that right now. So make sure it's focused on them. Consolidate messages as much as possible, just like we talked about earlier with your customers. Try to communicate as many things as succinctly as possible in the same communication so that you're not bombarding them over and over and over again with messages that they start to just kind of turn off and ignore. Clear subject lines and calls to action are more critical than ever right now. Even if you have a lot of things to communicate, make sure that when it hits their inbox, it's crystal clear in the subject line, not just what the point of the email is, but how it's going to benefit them to read it. Why should they engage with the message? And also the calls to action. What is it you want them to do? And I would say that in any marketing communication right now, it's very important to have some action that you're trying to drive. It could be as simple as getting them to visit your website and look at something, you know, sign up for an event that you have coming up, whatever it is. Just make sure that those calls to actions are crystal clear. And link out for more information to keep your body copy and the kind of crux of your message simple. Have those teaser lead-ins and link them out to your website, a document, whatever, if they want complete information. That'll help you keep the body of your marketing messages really, really clean. PR tips. I think we do quite a bit of PR work, and it's been difficult lately because honestly, the whole coronavirus pandemic is kind of dominating the news. And a lot of things that would previously have gotten good attention and coverage are a little bit harder to kind of cut through the noise and get out there. So I think it's more important than ever that if you're reaching out to media partners, if you're trying to get content placed, if you're trying to get a speaking slot at an event, however it is that public relations is working for you, that you make your push as newsworthy as possible. It shouldn't be self-serving. It should be about how you can elevate that publication or media outlet or channel or event. It should be very focused on them. The greater good is really important right now too. We've had a few clients that have made donations, or they've had products that are approved maybe to disinfect for coronavirus or to be used as personal protective equipment by healthcare professionals. As nice as that is, and as much as it's going to drive sales, you really need to look at it through the lens of the greater good. How is this kind of boon for your company also a boon for other people? Make sure that your outreach is focused on that instead of just, we're selling, buy, buy, buy. Reducing the cadence of your outreach, I think, is important right now, not just kind of oversaturating people and maybe pushing out as many media, press, communications as you would have before. I would really edit. This is a time to edit and make sure that it really hits the mark and you're not wasting people's time and you're not just going to have your message get lost. And earning placement is important. I think as nice as it is to, to pay to get something pushed out, to sponsor something in a newsletter, to advertise on a website, whatever it is that you're looking at doing, anything you can do to earn placement. By that, I mean getting an organic article written about you or your company, or being able to speak at an event on a panel or make a presentation instead of maybe just sponsoring it and having signage. That earned placement, that organic kind of rubber stamp of authenticity and credibility is very important right now because it helps people trust you. And so anything you can get that's organic and earned instead of paid is, I think, going to pay big dividends right now. Let's talk about the advertising space. Advertising is really interesting right now. So there are a couple of things that are happening in advertising. In the US, we call it out of home, but out of home are all the things that you see physically when you billboards, mobile signage on vehicles, things like that. That's all out of home. Out of home has been kind of difficult, and we've seen rates falling simply because there's not as much traffic on the streets. There's not as many people moving around. So one of the benefits of that for you, if you want to do those types of advertising tactics, is that your rates, you should really negotiate hard and get as good a rates as you can, if that's still going to help you reach your target audience and it's worth doing. And, we're seeing a lot of event marketing. Events aren't happening right now. They're going virtual. So there's different opportunities available, and people are having to revisit their event budgets and things like that. We're seeing with digital that at the same time people are online a lot more. So there's more opportunities for impressions. Ad rates are falling with most channels like Google, Facebook, some of the big ones. They're falling between 15 and 25%. Depending on, how much you're spending and kind of who your target audience is and things like that. So there are also some opportunities to get some more efficient advertising spend than maybe you could have done a few weeks or months ago. So all of this just leads me to say, revisit your channels and budgets. Things that might have worked really, really well for you in February might not work right now because the way people are engaging with advertising is changing. Where people are is changing. And again, you have a lot of leverage to negotiate right now on advertising. So negotiate hard wherever you can. I want to talk about the ad creative as well, because we're having to go back. A lot of ad campaigns that we had built before this was happening, we're having to go back and look at the advertising creative again and go, does this really still fit for these people, or do we need to change our tone of voice, change our message, change the offer to fit a new reality? And so for most of our clients, it hasn't been completely like gutting and redoing their campaigns, but we're having to go back and update them and refresh them so that they're current. And then because advertising is shifting so much and spend and responsiveness on some of these channels that we've all historically kind of known how they were going to perform for us are changing, monitor your metrics really, really closely, a lot more closely than you would have, because you may have some surprises in there. There might be some things that you test and try that work that didn't work before. And there might also be some things that you've historically been able to rely on that all of a sudden either they're not working at all, or you need to kind of recalibrate the equation to make them work. So I would really track very closely what's happening with your advertising dollars, what return, what ROI you're getting for that investment, and leverage metrics to change, to make changes to your campaigns. Social media, really interesting time for social media, as I know you know. And influencer marketing has really been impacted by the coronavirus outbreak. One thing we're seeing a lot in the US is that companies that are just forging ahead with their usual social media tone, which might be very self-serving, very salesy, constantly pushing their own products or services, maybe leveraging influencers to sell things out to their networks. People have lost a little bit of patience with that when it's very in their face and they feel like you're completely ignoring what's going on in the world and just plowing ahead with what's in it for me. So I think you can't be tone deaf or ignore the crisis. This is a time when you need to acknowledge what's going on in society, and especially with your customer and prospect groups, how the coronavirus is negatively impacting them. And try to do anything that you can to put a spin on your marketing messages that's very, very current, that acknowledges the reality that people have, and that makes them feel comfortable, and doesn't turn them off, because people are turning things off that offend them very quickly right now. Exercising EQ, you know, that emotional intelligence is important right now, and exhibiting real concern. Not just, hey, we know that people's incomes are down right now, but you should still be buying whatever we're selling. I think that really tapping into some of the soft things that are going on with people that you can potentially help with, doesn't have to have a revenue exchange attached to it, is very important. You know, I know with team, we've been doing a lot more training like this. We've put together a lot of panels. We've been writing blog posts that are sharing a lot of do-it-yourself tips. Would we love to have those people as clients at some point? We would, but we recognize that there's a ton of small businesses that are having to just muscle through on their own in marketing and communications and advertising areas that they're not comfortable in and they don't have a lot of capability in. And so we're happy to share, you know, our expert knowledge and help them understand what we know and leverage some best practices and some tips and tools. So this is a time to be giving, to give away, and to help people in any way that you can. It's also a time to highlight people. Instead of talking as much about your products and services, share customer use case stories, talk about your employees that are going above and beyond, or took a pay cut, or, you know, are continuing to do what they can do to serve customers during this hard time. And the thing that we've seen the most, I think, is don't whine. Social media is not a place to air your fears, your struggles, your anxieties right now. As a business leader, it's a time to think about what you can provide for everybody else, what's going on in their world, focus more on your customers than yourself. You know, I know here in the US, so we've had quite a few celebrities, you know, from their big mansions or whatever, complain about having to shelter at home. And when you say that, you know, and there's a family that's got 8 people crowded into a little apartment somewhere in the city or something like that, it really doesn't land well. And there's been a pretty vicious backlash against some of those statements that really exhibit people's lack of understanding of what's going on with other people and how much worse it could be. So I would say exhibit a lot of gratitude and focus more on other people than yourself. Let's talk about website and content tips. We think of our websites as kind of static, but I think this is a time to refresh your content, take a look at your websites, or if if you've got apps in place, or if you're leveraging landing pages or something like that. This is the time to look back at those assets and kind of through the coronavirus lens say, does this need a makeover? You know, do I need to shake something up here? I would say putting COVID related information and advice front and center on your website is important. Even if it's a banner at the top that just says, you know, like customer service wait times or shipping fulfillment times will be blah, 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 or click here to visit our blog and see our latest update on what we're doing as a company on safety and things like that. So I would take the time to put that information front and center on your homepage and key pages of your website. Refresh your content calendar. For a lot of people, you know, a blog post that might have been really popular and made a lot of sense in January, it just doesn't right now. I know for a lot of our clients, we've been changing their content calendar. For instance, we work with a big construction company in the Eastern US, and we usually focus a whole lot on pushing their products and their services out there, and talking a lot about, you know, like pulling in customers. We've really shifted their content calendar in the past couple of months to highlighting what employees are doing. They've been doing a lot to give back in their community. They've given tons of food to some local food drives. They've been donating masks and disinfectant and things like that to some local nonprofits in their area. We've started focusing on those things. Instead of pushing products and services directly, we've started highlighting portfolio projects and like posting videos and images and things from current job sites, showcasing what they're doing around safety for their employees. So think about things like that. It's not that you still can't promote yourself or be out there or update your website and your content, but just make sure that it's kind of all through the lens of coronavirus and what people actually care about and want to hear. And then I think sharing soft content, which is kind of what I was touching on, talking about people, the human impact of what you do. This is a time that instead of, let's say you could do a post or a section on your website that's about a featured product. This might be the time to share a customer testimonial and a little story about how the product has benefited a person's life directly, instead of just listing the product benefits in bullet points. So sometimes you can present the exact same information, but you need to change up how you're doing it, how you're communicating that same message, make it a little bit more human, a little bit more soft. And I know we'll talk about those things a lot more as we deal with some individual questions in your own businesses. The last kind of bucket of advice I wanted to share today is just generally around the marketing and sales climate and how you should approach things. So yes, tactically, there's all of these different things that you can change, maybe with the subject line of an email or the homepage content of your website or your social media content calendar. But thinking more at an umbrella, 30,000 foot level, let's just talk about how to approach marketing and sales. I think one thing to remember is that despite all the things I've said about, hey, look at this, shake this up, consider doing this differently, not talking about losing your cohesive brand presence and voice. That should be constant. It should never change. And so make sure that even as you're having to like juggle some of these different things and you know, execute marketing and sales in a little bit different way, that you're still being you. You're true to your mission, you're living your values, your company voice hasn't changed. People still feel a personality from you and that is there. Align your messages across channels. This is a time where it's easy to go, oh, I tweaked my email this way, and we're updating the website this way, and the social calendar has changed this way, and oh, we're going to skip doing this press release, or we're going to change this ad. Make sure that even as all those things are in flux, there's this alignment of the messages across all the channels, and they're kind of rolling up into a marketing stack that supports each other, that you're still aligning your messaging across everything you're doing, even as you're having to make a lot of changes. Be authentic and bold. Be yourself. This is a time when companies do need a personality. People to have trust and to continue spending money on products and services, they need confidence, and that really comes from you at your core. So be very authentic in your voice, be very honest in your communications, be bold in the marketplace. This isn't a time to like get really quiet and insular and pull back. And kind of like we touched on a little bit earlier when we were talking about content, offer solutions whether there's revenue tied to it or not. People can really use a boost right now, and I guarantee you that if you're giving and you're able to make some concessions or offer some free information or advice or give something away to your customers or people in your community, even if you're not going to get immediate revenue back from it, the brand equity and the loyalty and the reputation that you'll gain from that will pay big dividends down the road. You can go to the next one. This kind of ties into that. Businesses fundamentally, of course, we function from a me mindset. Every business, even whether it's a governmental entity, an NGO, whether it's in the service sector, whether it's a consumer packaged good, it doesn't really matter. They exist to make money. They exist to make, you know, to embody their mission and make an impact on the world. But this is really a time to shift the marketing conversation and your sales conversations from me to we. So I think tangibly demonstrating concern for your customers and your community is more important than ever. Even if it's small things, they're going to really appreciate anything you can push out there that's about them more than it's about you. I think storytelling has emerged as very important. Any way that you can take a marketing message or an ad and turn it into a real world story is going to just amplify the effectiveness tenfold. So think about how, if there's something that you need to convey, there's a piece of content you want to create, there's an ad you want to, you know, to push out, that you're thinking about, how can I weave a personal narrative into this? Can I turn this into a story? And if you can, do it. It will work much better. And when you do have to talk about you, whatever's going on with your company, a new product launch, if you're pushing a sales communication out, talk about you in the context of others. How does whatever marketing message or sales message you're pushing out actually benefit the other person along with you, so that you're at least, I get that everything can't be completely altruistic. Every single thing you post online, every single business activity you engage in can't be about other people. Your business will die. But talk about yourself in the context of others. Well, it will really up the effectiveness a great deal. Maintaining connectivity is important. I think we've all adapted pretty well globally to this new virtual events, video meetings and things like that, just jumping on the phone. Yeah, we all miss each other. And I think there's components of the old way of doing things that were great and that we'll be glad to get back to. At the same time, we've proven that you can maintain connectivity even in this new era. And even virtual sales are very popular right now. It's really working, reaching out just via phone and email and things like that, instead of walking directly into a business or trying to get a lunch or a happy hour scheduled with somebody. So make sure that you're maintaining connectivity with the key people around you, even without the in-person meetings. And keep open lines of communications with all of your business stakeholders. I think that's kind of flowed down through this entire presentation. Stay in touch with people, put a little extra effort into reaching out more frequently, sharing a little more openly, and trying to serve them in some different ways. And then also when we get back to normal, those relationships will still be rock solid and in place. And then I've gotten a lot of questions about kind of sales approaches and scripts. If you have a field team that's out there, if you have, a group of operators that are kind of smiling and dialing and continuing to do sales that way, reaching back out to prospective customers or prior customers to try to get them to repurchase or engage, try something for the first time. I think that those efforts can still continue. Don't feel like you can't sell. You can sell. You just need to do it in an appropriate way. You might need to modify the way you've historically done it. This is not a time for aggressive tactics. That kind of pressuring people, even when they're saying they don't want to buy something, the time's bad, they don't have the money. Whereas in the past, you might have felt like that wasn't true and you could lean on them a little bit harder and get them over the line. People's patience for that has worn out. So I think you really need to go into sales acknowledging the other person's reality. And if the reality is that they can't or don't want to purchase your product or service at that time, I would be less aggressive in how much you were pushing them to convert. I would try to keep the door open for later, check back in with them frequently, and allow them a little bit more space than you might historically do. I think the other thing is demonstrating a willingness to help customers and prospects even as you sell. So we work with a couple of seed companies, and right now farmers are planting, and so our marketing and advertising and sales efforts are really aggressive. But one thing that we've done with those companies is try to do some public service campaigns that are pushing out information at no charge. Hosting webinars and things like this at no charge to help the farmers that, of course, they ultimately want to sell seeds to, but to help the farmers get invested in their brand and to feel like these companies are supporting them at a higher level than just, hey, you want to plant this, here's the cost of our seeds. So I think demonstrating that willingness to help customers and leads in the sales cycle is really important. And you can do that through email nurturing. You can do that through social media. You can do that through your blog content. You can do it in a huge variety of ways, hosting education events and things like that. But that willingness will actually drive sales. And so I think weaving in things that are not self-serving is going to actually serve you best at the end of the day. Those are the things that I wanted to talk to you about and kind of present. I hope it was helpful, and I'd love to answer any questions that you have. So let me know if there's a certain situation or something you want to chat about.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much. This has really been outstanding. Thank you so much. And it's also been like very relevant, with the current conditions of, of work, with the current conditions that people are actually going through right now. So I think this is really, really so important. Thank you so much for sharing, Trish.
You're
Thank you
very
so
welcome.
much. Guys, I would ask that you drop your questions in, all right? If you want me to bring you up on video, you can just raise your hands up by clicking the raise your hand sign. But there's a Q&A box, just drop your questions in there. Okay, so Trish, while you were speaking, I had some questions I had in mind for you. The
Sure.
first was about PR, right?
Mhm.
I would like you to talk a little bit more about how to stand out right now, because right now, there's just this explosion of social media usage. Like everybody's doing a Zoom call, everybody's on Facebook Live, and it gets really crazy at specific times of the week over here in Nigeria. So the question would be, how do people stand out from the noise?
Yeah, I think I number one would remember that a lot of coverage, whether something takes off virally, just kind of
Mhm.
through social followers, whether something gets picked up by a media outlet for coverage, it has to appeal to a broad group of people. And I think to your point, it wasn't as cluttered a few months ago. There wasn't as much volume of just stuff getting pushed out there. So it was a little bit easier to be seen and heard with more mundane content. That's not working as much anymore. And I think you have a couple of options. Number one is the human story. Anytime that you can create a real story arc of pain, solving a problem, think of how a book or something flows, where you have this crescendo of action and then the situation's resolved. Those human stories, whether it's a tearjerker, whether it's funny, those are really working. I think that anytime that it's about giving back and it relates directly to current events, it's going to be more likely to get picked up. Whatever you're doing, if you can somehow attach it to the pandemic, solving a problem with the outbreak, responding in your community, it's going to be much more likely to get followed because that's just what's on people's minds right now. And then I do think people are looking for a little relief from the worries, the fears, and all of that. So anything that brings a little humor, a little joy, a little brightness, again, it's going to be much more likely to get picked up. This is also a time to reach out personally. I think, like in the past, we could kind of do a press release distribution, and maybe it just organically kind of got into the right places. People saw it because people are so busy right now. I would take the time to actually submit to somebody or reach out to somebody personally, like do a quick direct message with somebody or send an email to a publication and ask them to cover you. It will just help you get a lot more lift from your PR efforts.
Okay, thank you very much. I think while we're on the call, you made a specific point about being authentic and connecting to people. So I actually started drafting out an email that I want to send out to stakeholders,
Yeah.
including people who have funded us in the past, to like ask, hey, how are you doing? Just to connect with them, as a person. Thank you very much for sharing. Could you talk a little bit more about authenticity? Because there are so many people who have like, I don't know if they've achieved a lot, but they have like a cloud. They are very proud. They are not approachable. Um, so I would like you to talk a little bit more about authenticity, like being authentic and bold and being yourself without having to pretend to be somebody else. Also.
Yeah. It's a hard thing, I know, especially because, historically in the business climate and honestly in a lot of our cultures, ego has been rewarded, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being proud, having a public face that you put out there, focusing a lot on your image. I think honestly, on a broad global cultural level, that's become less important. And I think that's a good thing. I think you're seeing more business leaders open up a little bit more about their personal challenges, their struggles in their business. I think a very important component of this is vulnerability. And vulnerability can be frightening, especially for people who have functioned for a long time with a carefully crafted public image, you know?
Can I stop you there? This point is really very important, especially to us Nigerians, like or Africans broadly. You know, like we could be religious and we could like we are bold people, proud people. Um, it's part of our culture. But the thing is that when you talk about vulnerability, I want you to really throw more light in there because that's something that I've benefited from, and I would like other people on this call to really benefit from. Like, what does it mean to be vulnerable as a leader, as a tough leader?
Yeah. I mean, I think that vulnerability, for one thing, you can't confuse it with a lack of confidence. You can't confuse it with being whiny or being needy. That's not what vulnerability is. Vulnerability is about being real. Like, every one of us, I think, has unique gifts and capabilities that we're here to manifest in the world, right? There's purpose for all of us. And we can have huge impact together, positive impact on the people around us, our societies, our cities, our communities, our neighborhoods. So I don't think any of this is about weakening yourself. Vulnerability is just about being honest about the things that you're not awesome at, the knowledge gaps that you have, the challenges that you have faced or you are facing, and doing it in a very authentic way. It's not about being whiny. It's not about always asking for help. It's not about appearing weak. I think vulnerability is proving to be one of the greatest strengths of emerging business leaders in a new reality. And it's critical. And people shouldn't view it as a negative thing. When done right, it does nothing but endear people to you and draw in help from quarters where you would have never thought it came from.
Okay. Okay. So I would like to ask, as a leader, how do I demonstrate vulnerability? You know.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is just opening a little window into what's going on inside of you, which I know is hard. Instead of thinking about, what's going to make me look good in the moment, it's about saying, where am I really at? What do I really have to say? What do I really need? And so a lot of it is, it's already there. We just don't let it out. We just hide it. We shove our real self in a closet and we put this false front out to the world. And I have to say, like, I just don't think that's the thing that's going to take business leaders forward as much as it historically has. I think that people right now can smell the falsehood in that. And they're looking for people that they can really feel like they know on a personal level. Character is mattering a lot. And character isn't all about the good stuff. Character is also about dealing honestly and openly with things that aren't perfect in you, in your company, in the world. So, I mean, that would be my comment on that. And I know it's hard. Americans are proud too, like we set the standard for some of this stuff. So I get it.
Thank you very much. I know some people have questions here, so I'll take some questions from the participants. So
Sure.
we'll start with the first one. Thank you so much for this lecture, Trish. I want to ask for a hair extension brand. How can we remain relevant or make sales, knowing that the lockdown is a major reason ladies won't see the need to purchase our product?
Yeah, that I know is very impactful. One thing we're seeing though is that, and I don't know, I've felt it as a woman, where some days I get up and I realize, okay, I don't have any meetings that are going to make me be on video or whatever today. So maybe I'll just sit around in my pajamas and not put any makeup on, and and not kind of not take care of myself. That's okay for the first few weeks. But you really start to feel yucky. I mean, honestly, how people look, appearance, image, it's not just about other people, it's about us. And I think any way that you can remind your customers that this isn't just about being out and being seen, it's about how they feel as a person, and that beauty and self-care are very important to getting through this period. I also think anything you can do to acknowledge their economic reality, maybe stretch out, how often they come in to spread the cost, and maybe offering some reductions or some different packages than you historically have that kind of preserve the core of your business, but maybe aren't focused on upselling every premium or every highest level service. I think those things will be well appreciated. But I would honestly, that's a case where I would remind people that beauty isn't about others, it's about you. And if you're not feeling beautiful, you're not going to be productive, you're not going to be as good a spouse and a parent and a friend and all of those things. So that's not to be vain, but we all like to look good. We all like to feel good. So don't let your customers lose sight of that.
Okay, great. Um, Another question here is from a participant asking, good afternoon, Ma. My question is this: as an entrepreneur, I know how I have a good product, but I notice I find it very difficult to sell myself or my products to the public. How do I come out from this shadow?
I mean, can be a common problem. I would say, number one, that not every entrepreneur has to be a brilliant salesperson. Sometimes you're not. You're a better inventor and developer of something than maybe the person that needs to be selling it. Not every company founder or every creator of something has to be the person selling it. We see that a lot, but I wouldn't be afraid to leverage distribution networks, outside salespeople, other staff members to do the heavy lifting on sales if that's just not what you're good at. I mean, I think we all know that those inherently gifted salespeople who can just sell anything and engage with anybody, they're very rare. We're not all wired that way, and that's okay. So I would lean on other people and other networks to do some of that for you if it's not where your strengths are. The other thing I would say, though, is that it can be hard for all of us to sell ourselves or sell something we created. We can feel like we're opening ourselves up. It kind of gets back to the vulnerability conversation, right? Different for somebody else to sell something you made and take some criticism on it, or somebody not wanting to have it. It can cut you like a knife when it's your thing. It's the thing you created, the thing you love and are proud of. So you really have to be able to get in a good space to take constructive criticism, to not take no's personally, and to have the resolve and the determination to forge ahead anyway, to not tie the reception that product gets to you as a person, because it's not. I mean, a ton of great leaders have had huge product flops and failures and things like that. And it's not who they are. It's a thing that happened to them. It's something they created that didn't work the way they thought it would. So I think if you can take down the level that you're tying the reception of that product to you as a person, you won't be as sensitive about it. It'll be easier to sell. I mean, those are, I think, the things that would probably make it a little bit easier. And like I said, if it's just a process you hate, find a way around it. Find a way to enable other people and other systems to sell for you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for that. I think I was reading about John D. Rockefeller, and I think as part of his biography, it was mentioned that he was making a lot of money from the sales of like crude oil products and all that. But then when he quickly recognized the opportunity that Henry Ford was presenting, by selling PMS, and then he quickly switched. So many times it might be that a lot of people are so like in love with their products, and they have like this huge infrastructure that they already have. They have to use it. So I want you to talk, briefly about one of the points you talked about, which is like offering solutions. Offering solutions with or without revenue at this point in time. How might people leverage this crisis as an opportunity to rebirth themselves and their organizations? So I want you to address it to the individuals and then also to the businesses.
Sure. I think a lot of the issue of not seeing or capitalizing on a market opportunity, which is what you're talking about, something that's outside of what you're currently doing but presents itself, or even acknowledging that maybe something you've historically been very attached to and that's worked for you might not be working or might not be popular anymore, is you really can't think about it from your perspective. Of course, it's easier for all of us to sell the thing that we love and to just keep forging ahead with what we've built and what we know and what we feel good at. Unfortunately, markets and consumer demands are changing constantly right now. And the odds that any of us are doing in 10 years exactly what we're doing today are about this. You know, we are going to have to adapt, all of us, to keep our businesses fresh, to be successful, to be contributing to the world. So, you know, I feel like a great deal of it has to come from marketplace demand. It can't be about, what do I like to do? What am I attached to? What have I already built? It has to be about, where is the market going? What do consumers, whether you have your customers or businesses or individuals, whether you're selling products or services or a program, if you're an NGO or a government division, then, you know, you've really got to look at it through the lens of what's happening in the marketplace and where can I solve a problem. I mean, there's really only two reasons people buy things. I'm not trying to oversimplify marketing, but they solve a problem for them. They make them feel good. The best products and services do both. You know, the best products and services both solve your problem and make you feel good. Of course, there's fluffy discretionary spending that does nothing but make you feel good. That's all it's about. And yet, there are commoditized things that are just a necessity and you only buy them because you need them. But really, the most successful, the products and services with longevity, are addressing both of those marketplace needs all the time. And if you're looking at your products and services and the future of your company through that lens, you'll make much better decisions. Because it won't just be about you. It won't be just about what you have in front of you at the moment or what you've built or what's historically worked.
Makes a lot of sense. Trish, thank you very much for that. I want us to move a little bit to external communication, you know,
Sure.
which you already talked about. Somebody is asking here about, how do I become a thought leader?
Yeah. So thought leadership, a lot of people think thought leadership is just being respected and being covered, you know, out in the world, being out there and having a reputation. That's not really what thought leadership is. That's what celebrity is. That's a bit of a pop culture mentality, right? Thought leaders have to have a unique perspective on something. That truly is what a thought leader is. It's someone that's looking at the state of the world and they have a unique point of view. They have something to say that hasn't been necessarily been said before. Or that desperately needs to be heard, or that's very forward thinking. I think I see a lot of people write kind of mediocre blog posts, let's say, or articles, opinion pieces, that are kind of regurgitating information and concepts that are already out there. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it can be helpful. It can definitely pick up SEO traffic. Just don't kid yourself, you're a thought leader. You're a thought leader if you look at something, you turn the rock over and there's something on the underside that people haven't thought about before, and you're able to shine a light on it. And so I think that you really have to push yourself mentally, intellectually, to look at data in a fresh way, look at the future in a fresh way, offer a different approach to something than people are thinking about, and then you become a thought leader.
Yeah, wow, that's brilliant. Could you throw more light a little bit into the aspect of, you know, pushing yourself mentally? Like, that's some form of forceful advancement in terms of like intellectual capacity. You know, like, how might people be able to, you know, achieve that or start the journey? You know?
I think a lot of it is consuming other thought leadership pieces. You know, we kind of, it's interesting. Thought leadership is not about mimicry, but it is about a mindset that's already out there in the marketplace. So I think, you know, we all tend to read books, consume media, follow, you know, people on social media that are in our industry, are typically aligned with us on political issues, on social issues, on maybe the way we approach our business or our finances, right? We tend to bolster the belief systems we already have. I don't think a lot of us do that consciously, but, am I going to pick up a book about plumbing? I probably should. If I want to be a thought leader, I need to push myself outside of advertising and not just think about advertising or read what's already out there. Am I willing to read a book by a leader that, I read the back of the cover and go, I don't know if I really am going to like this or not. This seems like a kind of out there idea. It's not making you shift your belief system to everything, but you have to open up your mind. And you can't do that within your own mind. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're always surrounding yourself with yourself, you're never going to change. You're not going to push your intellectual capacity. You're not going to change your thinking. So I would just encourage all of you to listen to some different voices, read some different types of words, get beyond your comfort zone, and it's going to be much easier for you to have a fresh perspective on something.
Trish, that's a tough one to implement.
I know it is.
That's a tough one to implement. Like, people suddenly having to listen to someone new, and I don't know. Good luck. but I don't know.
Take baby steps. You don't have to start with something that's like a completely, out off the wall something, but push yourself outside of your comfort zone. Don't just consume what pops to mind. Because remember, if you're really striving to become a thought leader, you are going to want people to listen to your different perspective, right? That's the entire point of the exercise. And if you can't be open-minded enough to do that yourself, how can you ask others to do it of you? So,
Exactly.
Walk the walk.
Walk the walk. So guys, you can hear that thought leadership, it just means that if I think about veterinary medicine, who comes to mind? If I think about football, who comes to mind? If you mention politics, who comes to mind? If you mention business, who comes to mind? If you mention technology, who comes to mind? So if people think about the subject matter, would you come to mind? And if you would come to mind, you have to, be able to expand your mindset to reading other people's books, articles, people who completely share a different point of view from what you currently believe. Just trying to understand their own perspective.
And I think one thing to remember, there's a little bit of insularity to our content consumption usually. Like I said, we tend to look for things that bolster our current viewpoint instead of contradicting it. We tend to want things to reinforce what we already believe instead of challenging what we believe. Consuming content that challenges or disrupts what you've thought, it doesn't mean you have to adopt it. If you read a book about communism, you're not necessarily going to become a communist. I mean, it's not a direct correlation.
Yeah, that's true.
But it might be interesting to challenge some of the unchallenged beliefs that you've just absorbed by being in a culture, in a society, in your own family environment, in your own thoughts and beliefs over the years. So I think that's the other piece, not to think that because you're consuming content and a different point of view about something that it's going to change who you are at your core. The point is about opening your mind, not about, every book you reading transforming you into a different person. Because honestly, if that happens anyway, that means you don't know who you are, right?
Exactly. Thank you very much, Trish, for answering that. The next question is from Eric Obu. Eric is asking, my company and Vets Arc have been educating and providing face masks and food to the people of Ajegunle. My question is, how can we engage the people after the COVID-19?
Yeah. Collecting contact information or getting people on the list or followers on social, or even hitting your website where they can be tracked, by analytics software or pixels or things like that, has been really important to all of our clients right now. And I think that's really the key to this. What you're wanting is that after this difficult period is over, this period where you're doing something that's really outside of your normal scope of business to benefit the community, how do you make sure that those relationships last and you're able to leverage them in some longer term way? You can only do that if you somehow have the contact information for those individuals. So however you do it, I would say you have to get them to hit a landing page or something that you own so that you can track them and you can promote to them later. You need to get their email addresses. You need to, get them into an app if you're using an app for anything, so that you have their user access and things like that. Then you can deal with how to maintain those relationships and reach out to them later. If you don't do that now, though, it's going to be very difficult to re-engage with those people in an entirely different set of circumstances for entirely different reasons later. But if somehow you can capture their user data somewhere, you'll have the capacity to nurture those channels down the road. And to get creative about that, get creative about how you're doing it. If you need to create a piece of content they'll all love, give something away,
Yeah, Trish, in the light of this, will there be a post-COVID?
Mm-hmm.
Will there be, because I think about most of the diseases, infectious diseases that have, impacted the world, both in terms of animal health and human health and environmental health. And one of the things I see is that these diseases come to stay, many times. So will there be a post-COVID-19? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat, honestly. I don't know when and to what extent coronavirus isn't going to impact us the way it is right now. So, I think that, yes, you can have that long-term look at, what happens post-COVID-19. Post-COVID-19 could be 2 years away when we have a vaccine or something. We don't know yet. So I would maybe even shift that focus from, when this is all over, I'm going to reach out to these people, to what is a reason and what is a right level of connectivity to stay in touch with them even now. Because who knows when that later is going to be. And I think that's exactly what you're getting at, that we can't all wait for some magical moment in the future where everything poof goes back the way it was. And things are easy. So it may be a phased approach where it's like, how do we maintain connectivity and continue to support them even during the COVID-19 crisis? What happens as it starts to ease and our relationship with them has to change, because it's not about face masks, and safety education anymore. And then how do we maybe convert a subset of them to customers or partners or advocates in the longer term? So it may have to be kind of a phased approach where you're thinking about how to maintain these relationships.
That sounds great. And let me bring this up, but let me ask it in a very diplomatic way. Okay? It's a controversial question, but I would be very diplomatic about it. And the question is, for faith-based institutions who are heavily reliant on physical meetings, how might faith-based institutions rethink outreach programs and rethink how to engage their communities? Because I know there are a number of people here who belong to faith-based organizations outside of their business work. So how might they begin to rethink outreach programs or physical meetings and stuff like that?
Yeah. I know faith-based organizations historically are very touchy-feely. It's all about being together, right? It's all about supporting each other, kind of in person. I mean, the whole point is that you're, a spiritual community and you're supporting each other. I think some of it is getting out of the mindset that has to happen in person. Some of it is making that shift so that you're even open to other possibilities beyond what you're used to doing. And if that openness isn't there, you're not even going to see the solutions in front of you. If you are just laser focused on, we have to get the congregation back into the church building as soon as possible, you're not even going to be opening your mind to other ways to serve your calling, you know, to live your purpose. I think there's a huge volume of things that faith-based groups do that does not have to be done in person. It's just the way we've always done it. And so I think counseling, I think a lot of delivery of content, whether it's sermons, whether it's Bible study groups, things like that, those things can be facilitated with technology. It may not be as comfortable. It's interesting too, I think a lot of pastors, and I don't want to talk just about churches because I know there's a lot of NGOs and faith-based organizations that aren't churches, but they almost need the energy of the congregation. It's probably hard, just like it is for musicians, you know, when they're giving kind of an online conference or a concert right now, and you're sitting in your living room and there's no audience, there's no one to interact with, there's no energy that's feeding you. I think some of that drive is honestly about that person, that they need it, maybe more than the people that are out there in the world that they're trying to serve need it. So I don't see a huge hurdle. I think technology can enable a lot of those things to happen. I would also encourage faith-based organizations to be willing to record and automate more than they historically have. We've always wanted everything to be very fresh and in the moment. And it's hard sometimes to think about, wow, can I record something and make it available to people anytime they can consume it? You know, it's still out there in 6 months. And of course you can. There are things that are universally relevant and have longevity and can be recorded and can be shared in some non-traditional ways where people don't have to be all in the same place. They don't have to be consuming something all at the same time or experiencing something all at the same time. So I think those are some of the things I think about. And also where you do need to have a touch with someone, where you're providing them with something that they need. I know that it doesn't help with services maybe as much. That can be done in a drive-through fashion or something like that. You know, if you're a faith-based food bank, or you're, you know, making something available for free to a certain community, just let go of the in-person interaction having to be so tight and figure out a way to streamline, automate, maintain a little more distance, but still get that item into the hands of the people that need it. Those would be some of my suggestions.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Trish. So moving on to the next question. In the light of current realities, what is the best mode of marketing one can use to introduce a vegetable oil brand? So I think this person sells vegetable oil. So they are wondering best mode of marketing. And I would say you can use this opportunity to also address other agricultural commodities like fish, like chicken, you know, things people consume. Like how might people think differently about how they market their products?
Yeah. This is a time where you really have to differentiate new products. I think it really does have to be at a lower price point, be a better product, offer a different quantity, offer a different delivery distribution system to catch people's attention. It doesn't, I don't think, have as much to do sometimes with the product quality, which can be frustrating as an entrepreneur when you're creating something and you go, but it's really good, it's the best. Like, why does nobody care? But something has to pique their interest in it. So I would think about what that is. And kind of like we talked about a little bit on Tuesday, a lot of new products right now are needing to go through existing channels. Like, you don't have as much of people just walking through retail spaces and seeing something and just, you know, shopping maybe in the looky-loo casual way that they would have a few months ago. So I think figuring out if you can get into retail networks that are existing, work with the owners and sales staff so they understand the benefits of your product and can kind of push it, providing some incentives for people to refer or share offers or information with each other. So, you know, whether it's people that are currently buying or that currently know you, giving them some incentive to push information about the new vegetable oil out, whether it's providing some extra discounted wholesale rate for a while to retailers or distribution points. You also need to find a way to motivate people that are already selling products in that space to promote yours over another option. And so I think there's a little bit more kind of sales system manipulation that has to happen right now to get attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Trish. One of our participants is asking about, um, in terms of communication with teams and with customers, how much information is too much to share at this point?
Yeah. I always look at it through the lens of, is sharing it going to be beneficial for them? And is there some action that they can take based on it? So ideally, most of the information points you choose to share will do both. So for instance, you don't want to share with your team just that revenue's down so much, I don't even know if we're going to be in business next year. That doesn't help them. I mean, that's just going to traumatize them. There's no benefit to them hearing it, and there's nothing they can do about it. Now, what you could maybe talk about is, we lost these 3 big customers. And while we're concerned about it, we've got X number of leads over here. So let's talk about what we're going to do to close some of these leads and replace the revenue from these customers that we lost. That is beneficial for them to know, that level of detail. And you've given them an actionable problem to solve. They have a role to play in the solution. I tend to be very, very transparent with my team. Like, my team knows what our revenue is every month, what our profitability is, if any client's happy or unhappy, what I'm struggling with as a leader. I tend to be very open. Some people aren't comfortable with that. And I think there are business situations where it actually works against you, where it can create fear and stress in your workforce, and it can actually erode productivity. So I think I would always look at any piece of information you're talking about sharing from, is there a benefit from me telling them this? And can they help me do something about it? And if the answer to both of those is yes, I would share it most of the time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Trish. Another person is asking, in the case when a business does not have an online presence, how can one go about marketing now, considering the fact that we're not on total lockdown?
Yeah. I mean, one thing, I don't know if you're seeing this in Nigeria also, but we've had quite a few retail businesses, restaurants are beginning to open up and things like that, but a lot of them aren't seeing a lot of traffic. And I don't know if you're seeing the same thing, but it's like, yeah, you're open, but like, people aren't coming in to buy a whole bunch of stuff. So I think some of it is about, how do you typically communicate with your customers what's going on, and draw them in? Because I think there's that gap of just awareness that, like, your business is back open for business, and like, what's some incentive? People's habits have changed. You know what I mean? Like, where people might have had a habit of coming in and just shopping off the shelves for something, once a week. Their patterns have probably changed, and you've got to reinstitute those habits, those old habits that they had with you. So you have to communicate with them that you're open, and you have to start making those touches again to get them back in their old buying pattern. I think some of that can be advertising. I think some of it can be direct communications with customers if you do have customer lists and things like that. And I think some of it can be kind of social media and seeding those networks online where you can't really do it in person. But that's a tough question, and we're struggling with it too. There's no like pat answer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Trish, for that. Someone is asking about, I'm very grateful for the opportunity. I'm thinking of launching an affiliate marketing program in these times. How would you advise me in terms of marketing strategy or ads and sales to promote my affiliate program?
Well, I mean, affiliate programs are all about incentives, right? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. You're enlisting people to do something for your business, and there's some give and take, some mutually beneficial relationship that you're putting in place. In affiliate programs, you're usually relying largely on the affiliates to be part of your sales network or your fulfillment, distribution ecosystem. So they're really important, and their revenue is typically tied to your revenue, as they sell things for you. I think it's more important than ever right now, though, to look at things through their perspective. People are getting bombarded with a lot of offers and a lot of options right now at the same time that money and time can be a little bit tight, and people can be a little more conservative. So I would encourage you to stretch the terms in their favor a little bit early on to get them on board right now. Even if you're honest about, hey, for the first 6 months that you're an affiliate with us, you know, we're going to add 50% to your, you know, your percentage or whatever. It's short term. You're telling them it's not going to last forever, but you're motivating them to like really dive in with you. And I think even if you saw some short term, maybe the numbers weren't where you hoped they would be when you launched with your affiliates, I think you would get a lot of loyalty from your affiliates. You would get them to dive in with both feet, you know, with you right now and push really hard, even though it's a difficult time to be selling. And you're just building a lot of goodwill that's going to help you have a healthy affiliate ecosystem for the long term. So, I mean, that would be my suggestion, is just to really look at those incentives from their perspective and make it as rich as you possibly can so that they just hit the ground running.
Thank you very much, Trish, for that. One of our participants is asking, how do I introduce a new product to a skeptical market?
Yeah, that's always fun. You really, and I think we touched on this a little bit in the business resiliency conversation on Tuesday, but you've really got to look at the early adopters. You can't look at the entire skeptical marketplace. The bottom line is that anytime you introduce a new product that's not going to be just widely received automatically, you know, like maybe it's already being sold and you're just bringing a new player into the competitive space. But in this case, it sounds like you're putting a product into a space where you know there's some baked in skepticism about whether it's going to work or not, whether it's a good investment or not. You really can't try to reach the 80 or 100% of your target audience at that point. You've got to figure out what are the traits of those early adopters, the people that are on the very farthest end with the least skepticism, the least, you know, aversion to risk, the people that are most willing to test something new. It may be that they're younger, it may be that they're a little just more progressive in their thinking, but whatever those traits are, just try to find that 5 or 10% who will give it a shot. And if you can get them to adopt your product and like it, they will naturally seed the rest of the marketplace. The other waves of people will naturally follow, but those early adopting lighthouse customers are pretty much your only way in. They'll prove your product works to everybody else.
Okay, thank you very much, Trish. Someone is asking, please, can you highlight a bit on being vulnerable in the right way, and how can we not come at potential customers with a product in this COVID-19 era?
Being vulnerable in the right way. I think that one of the kind of key tenets about vulnerability is that it has to be authentic. We kind of touched on this before, but you can't fake vulnerability just to get some goodwill out of it, or to appear more approachable and honest to people. So I think the right way is always the real way. And yeah, I think that's simply the most important thing about vulnerability. And again, I think also anytime that you feel like you're venturing out into self-pity or whining or neediness, that's not vulnerability. Vulnerability is about being real about who you are, your life, the challenges and opportunities that you have in front of you. That's the right way to be vulnerable. So.
Okay, thank you, Trish. Someone is asking, I want to ask for an SME in cosmetics and beauty services. What is the best marketing strategy to and channel to explore this period?
Yeah, I think kind of with the same problem we were talking about with hair extensions and salon services earlier, this is a time where a lot of people are pulling back on their discretionary kind of beauty spending and services. So I think a lot of it really is going to come down into tapping into those emotional human needs, which I think is more about content, social media, influencer marketing, softer stuff than maybe running ads or doing a press release or something like that. So I would lean toward the softer human side. And I would also use real stories more than saying, you know, this product is going to take the bags away under your eyes or make your lips look beautiful or whatever, make your skin glow. I would let a customer say that for you because it's just going to mean so much more and be so much better received. I know that takes the legwork to reach out to your customers, get that user generated content back and do something with it. Whereas otherwise you could have just designed an ad and turned it on. But I really do think that that's the right way to approach it through that human lens, the human perspective of why does beauty still matter? How are your products and services making people feel? And that's going to be the best way to like keep marketing alive and keep products moving.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Someone is asking, hello Trish, thanks for the series of information you've shared on communication. Some of the partner tips you shared under internal communications are to acknowledge hurdles and ask for help, which is vulnerability. You also warn against not being or sounding needy. Can you share some opinion on how best one can balance these two?
Mm-hmm. I think one of them is helping yourself before you ask other people to help you. And by that, I mean, you know, I mentioned a couple of times in the presentation that when you present a problem, I'll already have a few solutions in mind. So I think there's a big difference between coming to somebody and going, oh, this is happening. I don't know what to do. You need to help me. It's so horrible. And coming to somebody and saying, dealing with exactly the same challenge, this is what we're facing right now. We've brainstormed these 3 possible things that we could do. I'm not sure how we might execute on them exactly, but this is what my team and I are thinking. What I'd like to ask from you is X. It's just a very different script and a very different approach. When you take a problem, you define it without whining. You present a couple possible solutions, even if they're not maybe the most brilliant or workable, and then you pull the person into your decision-making, your problem-solving process. That feels different than just coming to them and going, it's awful, I don't know. You know, that's just not the right way to go about it. So I know it's a subtle shift. You're still presenting the same problem. You're still ending up with an ask for help. But I really do think that how you go about it, the approach in that case, is everything.
Yeah, and just to add to that, someone is asking about, in cases you talked about cutting down salaries because of the COVID-19, and you also shared your own story of how you went about that. So the person is asking, what about if it happens that you appeal to your staff that you wanted to cut the salaries and then there was a revolt or they kicked against the idea, like what do you do? Hello, Trish?
Yeah. Sorry, did I freeze for a minute?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, can you finish the last little bit, the last sentence? I think that's all I missed.
Okay, yeah. So if the staff protest against a cutback in salaries
Yeah.
after appealing, what do you do?
Well, I mean, that's a difficult situation. I tried to share enough information that they understood why it was necessary and the logic behind it, because I feel like when staff knows that you're not being punitive, you're not making a decision just to benefit yourself, that it's necessary and it's logical and it's ultimately in their best interest at the end of the day, they're much more likely to accept it. I also, you know, like with my team, I've been telling them that we would revisit every 30 days. So they know it's not permanent. I'm not planning to keep it going forever, but also I can't predict the future. So there's kind of this rolling waiting period where we're going to make fresh decisions again together about how to move forward. I think usually when employees protest, like really get angry about something, It's either because the boss honestly isn't doing something that's in their best interest. It is self-serving, and it's, might be mean-spirited, or it might be unnecessary. And that honestly legitimately upsets them. You shouldn't do that. But if they understand that the decision's been difficult for you, and that it's necessitated by reality, and that it's not going to last forever, and that you feel bad for them with them, I would also say if you're cutting other people's salaries, you should cut your own. I know nobody wants to hear that, but it's the easiest way to keep them from protesting, going, hey, I cut your salary, but I'm taking a hit too. I'm taking it with you. We're in this together. I know sometimes people don't want to hear that, but modeling is so powerful. If you model the willingness to support the business, think about the long-term job, the long-term viability of the enterprise, and how positive that is for everybody, your staff will model that too. They'll be willing to give a little bit. So those are my suggestions.
Yeah, it's a very tough, decision to make. Okay, another person is asking, I'm a content writer for an upcoming art platform. This is my question. How do I go about writing the content that will attract the attention of the target audience, which happens to be homes and offices, in a country where art is not really valued? Do you get that? So art is not really valued here. We don't pay premium for our artwork, yeah. So in this part of the world, or if some people don't pay premium, a lot of people don't pay premium. So this person is a writer, and they're trying to create content for like a blog or art platform.
Right. Well, I would say this, content is really intended to be consumed by your customers or your target audience, and somehow modify their behavior down the road, right? You want them to support whatever the endeavor is that's behind the content that's being created. To do that, you really have to instill some human appreciation for whatever it is. So in terms of content around art, I would be, if your big hurdle is that society as a whole doesn't really value or invest in art, and you're trying to create a climate where art sales can be successful, of course, for the company you're advocating for, but you have a bigger picture problem. Do you know what I mean? You've got to shift minds and hearts before you can open the market up for yourself. I would really focus on proof cases that art is positive in people's lives, that it should be valued, that the appreciation of beauty, the love of art, the creation of art is healthy for people. It makes their lives better. It makes them happier. Support it with data, like we were talking about earlier. Look at studies, even if they've been done in other parts of the world, about how art positively impacts society, how it makes people happier, healthier, better mental well-being, which it does. It does all of those things. You need to start to shift the minds and hearts of your target audience before you can even flow through to sell. And so I would focus on bolstering your case that art matters before you try to sell art.
Yeah. A lot of work. There's no shortcut, man. I think it's a very important question here. How do we survive COVID-19? The financial effects of COVID-19. Sales are low, and you have staff salaries to pay every month. And this is coming from a doctor who also runs farms. So I think I kind of understand, like, how do we as farmers withstand the financial impact of COVID-19?
Yeah. I got some hard advice from one of my mentors, which is why almost 2 months ago now I cut staff salaries back, even before I was 100% sure how things were going to shake out. The businesses that survive will deal with their operational reality faster than others. They won't sit around with optimism or the inability to act, just being paralyzed by the situation. You really need to, and it is hard advice, but one of my mentors just said, you've got to lay people off. You've got to ask for help from your lenders. You've got to cut cost as much as you can early before you even know if you have to, because to ensure survival, you've just got to be conservative and you've got to make moves fast. You can always roll things back out, turn things back on, bring people back, raise salaries later. But if you don't survive, you're not going to have the ability to do any of that. So I think as a business leader, as much as you want to care for the humans, that are kind of the machine of your business, you also have to make sure that the machine itself survives. I mean, if the business doesn't survive, you can't take care of anybody. And make the hard moves fast. I mean, I know that's a hard thing to
Yeah,
hear.
yeah, and I think Trish, we need to hit this a little bit more because I remember when the last recession happened in Nigeria, and I was running my factory. I had to shut down. I was on loan, and I received my loan at about 190 naira or so to a dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And when it was time to start paying back, it went as high as 300 naira. I had to appeal to my investor to help me extend the moratorium period. And they did so, but by the next quarter, it was 380 naira. I had to start paying. I had to make the tough decision to keep to my words, sell off my inventory, and shut down operations just so I could pay my investors. So, I think I need you to really come out plainly to hey, you have this farm you're running, but it might make more sense to cut your losses early, than to keep on running this farm with high costs and then your sales are low. Like I want you to, say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's so true, and we talked about it a little bit on Tuesday that cash flow is more important than anything right now. And every month that you refuse to cut cost or trim staff and you let expenses outrun revenue, you just can't carry a burn rate right now. You have got to deal with the revenue reality and get cost and salaries in alignment with it. Because like we've been talking about through the session, we don't necessarily know how long this is going to go on, or if coronavirus is going to resurge at some point and us have to go back into lockdown. I mean, I hate to think of that, but as business owners, we're optimistic, and that's good. We run on optimism, but this is not a time to stick your head in the sand and pretend that something is not happening. I think the other thing to acknowledge, and I know that this is really hard, is that all of our businesses won't survive, probably. There will be businesses that don't make it. I think that looking ahead, we do something at Team with our campaigns and things that we do in the marketing space. We call them pre-mortems, meaning we look ahead and we go, if this thing dies or if this thing's horrible, what will likely have killed it? We try to look ahead and go, what are the factors that would take this thing down, this good idea? I think it's a smart time for all of you to do a little pre-mortem on your business. They can be a little depressing to do sometimes, but it can also be super empowering to just go, I've looked the worst case scenario in the face and I've got a plan B to deal with it if it happens. And just the act of doing that can help you not get paralyzed by fear or be afraid to make the hard moves early or be, unable to be honest with people and transparent and ask for help. So I would really encourage all of you to do a little pre-mortem on your business right now through the idea of coronavirus and what you're dealing with now, and say, how am I going to deal with things if they do get worse? It lets you prepare, plan ahead, have contingencies in place, be even emotionally prepared to deal with some hard stuff if it comes later. It's really important. I don't like to do it, but I did that in my business. I did a super low revenue projection where I was like, what if our revenue is just like half or less of what it's historically been? What am I going to do? What do I have to do in terms of labor costs? What do I have to do in terms of our space? And it's actually empowering because you usually come out of it going, okay, I at least I've got a plan,
Yeah, yeah. Trish, thank you for sharing that because that's a very important advice. And I think it will save a lot of people here on this call. It was a tough one for me too. I had to appeal to my own staff to have a salary cut, and they understood with me. I really appreciate every one of them. They understood with me. And I believe we're going to keep the business running. So I would advise people, so someone is on this call who runs a luxury fashion brand, and she's asking about how she can boost sales right now.
I think you have some of the same issues with a premium fashion brand that you have with the beauty brands and things like that. Number one, people aren't maybe as focused on their appearance as they usually are because they're just not out as much. They're not being seen as much. It's not as important. And also, if you're dealing with a discretionary product that's high priced, those are typically some of the first things to go. That, when people are trying to balance a budget, that's the thing they won't do. Well, I just won't buy a new spring dress like I historically would do every May, go out and get some nice new summer clothes. But I think there's a couple of things I would recommend. Number one is the same things that we talked about with art, with hair extensions, with beauty brands. You've got to tap into the human motivation for your product. Making people feel good, making people feel beautiful, making an investment in themselves, keeping a piece of normalcy during a very uncertain time. You can legitimately tap into that. And I think you also need to focus on your top tier of customers. You need to recognize that there is always an upper echelon for whom very little changes, even in these situations. They have the money to weather it. Their life continues largely as usual. You need to take really good care and communicate heavily with those people because they're probably the customers, that little sliver of your customer base that will carry you through. They will continue to buy. Their old habits will stay in place. And so I'd say nurture them and try to upsell and get as much revenue out of the people that really can afford it, rather than beating on the people that probably can't afford it and you're wasting your time to try to get them to buy right now. It will be a much more efficient use of your dollars, your marketing and sales spend, and it'll also be more likely to deliver a return on investment.
Okay, thank you, Trish. I want to merge two questions together. One of them is from a management consultancy firm that offers business development services. Um, they're trying to figure out how to target more high-paying clients right now. And then the second one is asking about how to scale their business within a short time without using grants or investment money.
Yeah, let me take the first one. I think business services right now, to higher paying clients, a lot of it is just about the profiles of the companies and the executives that you're looking at. I think you need to do a lot of vetting. Again, because we want to put marketing dollars into play in the places that they're most likely to generate a return right now. This isn't a time where most businesses can just spend around, and everybody's not flush with cash, everybody's not confident. So I think it's a time to really know your target audience. This is a time when I would do a lot of research and insights work on who are those companies, those executives that are willing to pay high dollars for consulting services. What are the traits of them? Where are they consuming content, media, gathering? Is a LinkedIn a better social media channel for you to nurture and just go a lot lighter on a Facebook or an Instagram, something like that? Because that's just not where your key people are. And direct your attention and your dollars to the places where they are, and make sure you know that audience inside and out. If you don't, you'll waste a lot of money and effort trying to reach people that aren't going to buy anyway.
Okay, thank you, Trish. The other question about how to grow a business without using investment dollars.
Yeah. So I can empathize with this. I've bootstrapped all of my companies. I've never had investors. Certainly borrowed some strategically, but have really tried to bootstrap. I like it. It is a slower way to grow, and it can be a little more stressful way to grow as an owner, because you're having to incrementally, kind of pre-invest very strategically, let revenue catch up, then reinvest a little bit more to get yourself ready to move to the next level. You definitely take an income hit short term. You're not, your sweat equity is very important. So if you're going to try to bootstrap and not borrow and not bring investors in, I'd say just be prepared to make incremental changes, make some personal sacrifices. You're probably not going to make as much, and you're going to probably work really, really hard. You're also going to own 100% of whatever you build. You're not going to have other people all up in your business telling you what to do, and maybe impacting your mission or your operations in ways that you don't like. It's definitely a pro and con equation, but it can be done. I think it's just all about incremental measures, following a plan, following your intuition, being willing to work really, really hard. And I've done it. Plenty of other people have done it.
Okay, thank you, Trish. Someone said I've been studying marketing for a while, and I also started sharing my thoughts with people. Right now, people believe I'm a profound marketer, but the truth is, I only know the theory, more of the theory. So recently, I got some clients asking me to market for them. What do I do?
Yeah. Well, number one, there's nothing wrong with theory. I mean, a lot of industries, especially a lot of services, are grounded in theory. I use theory all the time. We end up doing things that we're testing. I'll tell you a couple of things. I don't think you should ever present yourself to a client as knowing something or being able to do or guarantee something that you can't. So as difficult as it might be, I think you need to let clients know where you feel like you've got some really solid understanding, even if it's not practical experience, but like where you truly have expertise and you believe that you can rock something out and do a really good job. And tell them where you feel like you're stretching yourself. I don't think clients mind that sometimes. I think if they believe in you and they think that your point of view, your philosophy is sound, they trust you as a person, they believe in your character, they'll give you a chance, which is great. But that's not going to last for very long if you just lie to them about what your capabilities are. So, for instance, we have some clients in an industry here in the US, hemp, that was heavily regulated until literally a little over a year ago. We're testing ad campaigns for a couple of clients right now. And I mean, it's just a really tough approval situation for the ads. The ad platforms haven't caught up with the law. There's a lot of confusion about what claims and what statements you can make. We're having ads get disapproved all the time, and we have to change them and resubmit them. But we told our clients that up front. We said, this is a new industry. The rules are unknown. You're going to be one of the first people advertising in this space. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have to redo stuff, but we're going to work through it together, and we're going to pave a way forward, and we're going to make this work. Clients are much more amenable to that situation. And it's not about you presenting yourself as not knowing what you're doing. It's about you presenting yourself honestly, that this is my strengths. This is the area I feel is right in my wheelhouse. This is where I'm stretching myself. Are you willing to stretch with me? All of marketing is an experiment right now. So I wouldn't be afraid to go out and market. I would just be very honest with yourself and the people who are paying you about what you're worth and what you really are able to do confidently and where you feel like you're experimenting. And I bet you money that if they trust you and they like your advice and your perspective, they'll still be in,
Yeah.
and you'll have protected yourself a little bit by just being straight with them.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Trish. I know the opportunity to ask more questions, but our time has run out.
I know.
So I'm so grateful. I would like everybody to drop a word of appreciation. How do you feel about the class? Drop 5 out of sentence. We're going to send everything. Trish is going to get the notes. So Trish, thank you so much. I want to be very respectful of your time. I'm so grateful, and everybody on this call, I believe every one of us are very grateful for the opportunity to have you. This is Business Oracle, and everybody on this call, there are other entrepreneurs, professionals, executives working for government or working for faith-based organizations on this call. And they all want to grow. They all want to become better people, have like this international mindset. and the connection, the opportunity to speak with you helps them accomplish their own goals. So I'm primarily just here as a facilitator to help make their own dreams happen. So thank you very much, Trish. I hope we will get you again to join
Yeah,
us.
absolutely. I've really enjoyed doing this. Thank you so much for inviting me, and feel free to share the deck out if anybody wants it, just as a reminder of some points. And my contact information is in there, so feel free to you know, friend or follow me online, or let me know if there's an extra question we didn't have time to answer, and I'll be happy to do it. So I wish you all great success. Stay positive, do the smart thing, you know, let people help you, and we'll all be all right.
Yeah, thank you so much, Trish. Thank you so much, Trish. So
You guys
guys,
have a great evening.
okay, thanks, Trish.
Bye.
Okay, bye. So guys, thank you very much for joining this call. I would share out, I will send out an email shortly, and you will have access to this video and access to the slide decks. So make sure we have your email. And then tomorrow we're having Professor Joseph Matthews, who will be joining us from the US. She's a professor of marketing, so make sure you're registered. Tomorrow is going to be a great time. And I mean, if you would like to, if you have some time on Saturday, we're thinking of having a time together to reflect about everything we've been learning and, you know, putting them to work in your life or in your business or in your career and all that. So I'll block out some time on Saturday. Yeah, we'll just get to talk with ourselves, all right? So it's been very exciting meeting each and every one of you. I can see you all on this call, Dr. Sambo, Ajiboye, Charles, Chigoze, Shugs, Dari, Eric, Walker Slender, Esther, Faith, Dandon, Faith Okowo, Wishes, Ifeanyi is everywhere, Israel, John Nongo, Joseph, Joshua, Hosanna, Obioma, Ruatobi, Onsimos, good to see you. Where first try here. Samson, Toba, Tommy Lola, Victor Lamipo. It's been an exciting time meeting each and every one of you. See you again tomorrow. Tomorrow's class will be 2 p.m., 2 to 4 p.m. with Professor Sacha, a very brilliant woman. So we'll wrap up tomorrow. So have a great time and talk to you tomorrow. All right? And then lest I forget to tell you guys, next week we're very fortunate, and we're going to have two great people speaking with us. One of them is among the greatest entrepreneurs in Southeast Asia. Dash is going to be with us next week. It's going to be mind-blowing. I will share with you the content of what Dash will be talking about. He's one of the top entrepreneurs in Malaysia, in Southeast Asia, in the entire Southeast Asia. He brought John Kerry and I think Obama to Malaysia some time ago. I was there. And he hosted a number of big events in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. So we would see tomorrow, 2 o'clock, and then next week, Dash and hopefully Dr. Mike Omotosho will be with us. So guys, have a great time and talk to you shortly.